traction. So I'm going to start my timer, and then it's all you. Introduce yourself however you want. And enjoy.
Cool. Okay, right on. Hey everybody, my name's Steven and I'm an alcoholic, drug addict. Willie hit me up and said he wanted me to share my story, and I thought that'd be a good idea. So let's see here. Yeah, just a pretty average drug addict, alcoholic. Started pretty early, I guess. I've always kind of been a troublemaker and whatnot. I think the first time I got caught shoplifting, I was in like second grade or something. I've always felt like a pretty good kid, but something, I don't know if something just didn't feel right, or I just didn't really have any like respect for laws or rules or whatever. I was always just concerned about with doing whatever I wanted and when I wanted and whatnot. And then as I got older, I kind of started meeting other kids that were similar. And once I started seeing other kids that were doing the same things that I were doing, it was just kind of like dumping dumping gasoline on a fire. And I had a few friends like that we were just constantly causing havoc and making trouble with whatever. And somebody else would come up with, hey, let's go try this drug, or let's go do this, and I would just always be down for it. And that went on, that started pretty heavily around like 15, 16. Started just gradually getting worse. Started kind of just staying away from home, and it was like, well, why would I want to go home when I can just keep partying and hang out with my friends that I like, you know what I mean? I have to deal with my parents or anything. And it just seemed a lot more appealing to me. And I never really like thought about any consequences or really thought about what I was doing. There was one instance where I was hanging out with some people, and all that was going through my mind at the time was like, oh, all right, we're going to get high or whatever. And it turned out I was basically involved in a home invasion. With like, it was like me and 3 other people. One guy went up to the door and like kicked it in and shit, and we like none of us knew what the fuck we were doing. We were all like just cracked out, and it was just a wreck. One guy grabbed like an old computer monitor. I'm like running around in their living room, grabbed like some CDs and shit, and it was just a disaster. It was just completely stupid. And I still had a conscience, I guess. I don't know if it was my conscience or if it was just that I was so worried about what I did, and I was thinking about, God damn, if this was my parents and this happened, I would feel terrible or whatever. And for like 3 days, I just constantly had this feeling of like looking over my shoulders. And I ended up going back to the lady's house, and I was like, hey, I was involved with what happened the other night, and I felt terrible about it. And like I gave her like my little backpack full of gadgets and like $40 or something. I was like, here, you can fix your doorknob and stuff or whatever, because it was all jacked up. But it was just a wreck. And I knew something was wrong. I was like, this doesn't seem right. This isn't who I am. What the hell am I doing? And even knowing that, it still wasn't enough to like get me straight or whatever, so to speak. I remember when I first got sent to prison, I remember looking at my ID, my like prison identification card, and thinking, gosh, what happened? I remember looking at that ID and seeing a picture of myself and remembering back to when I like lived in Nevada, and I'm just this happy kid and chasing lizards in the desert and stuff. It's like, wow, what happened? You know what I mean? I really don't know what happened. I don't know why I'm an alcoholic or a drug addict. I don't know why people turn to that and why it gets so appealing, if it is something that has to do with our past, or if it is just something in our brain where we get these substances in us, and it just destroys our lives. I really don't think why matters so much. It'd be cool to find out why these things are happening to certain people and not other people, but I think the bigger question is, how can we help others that are this way, you know what I mean? So I really don't want to go into a bunch of war stories. I already told Willie that at the beginning, and we all know what we've been through. We all know what we do when we're in active addiction, and most times it's not pretty. So long story short, the last time I was in jail, I've always gone to the meetings while I'm in jail. It was interesting to me. But I never took it serious when I got out. But this time, you know, a lot of you guys have heard of Johnny L, that good looking guy with 7 fingers or whatever, but he used to bring the meetings into the jail, and he said that people that go to meetings when they get out have a higher chance of being successful, or at least not coming back to jail. So I was like, well, shit, that sounds pretty good to me. So once I got released, I went down to the Alano Club and asked for his number, called him. He didn't answer, but I think that was like the very first start of my recovery, the very first start of me um, making a decision to kind of turn my life around and see where things were going. When I did get released, my kid's mom told me that, you know, your kids are basically forgetting about you. They're not you know, they're not asking about you anymore, because I just was not around for so long. So I was like, wow, you know, this isn't just some party. This isn't I'm not at that point where I don't have to worry about my consequences and things of what I'm doing. I was really faced with my actions and my decisions and where they're getting me. And it it didn't look good for me. You know, I was like, wow, you know, this is a real thing. This is where I'm going to end up, and this is how it's going to be. And my kids aren't going to know who I am. And is this the kind of dad that I want to be? And obviously it wasn't. So I took Johnny's advice and I started going to meetings, and that's basically how it began. My early recovery was going to a lot of meetings. You know, a lot of people, you hear about the 90 meetings in 90 days. I did well over that. I had a weekly routine of all the meetings that I would go to. Um, I got really involved in the meetings. I enjoyed helping out, setting things up. I would always hang out and talk to other members after the meetings. And a lot of it wasn't even recovery related. It was just, you know, shooting the shit about our week or things that we've done in our past or just whatever. And I think for a lot of, you know, for alcoholic and drug addict like me, those conversations usually don't happen. You know, my story is that, you know, I'm basically holed up in some tweaker house and just trying to figure out ways to get high, or doodling and messing with wires and shit, and just doing nonsensical stuff, not really having any meaningful conversations. um Not even that the conversation that I was having after the meetings were meaningful, but it just gave me um it made me feel good about myself. It made me feel like I'm kind of part of something, part of society. I'm um part of the human race or whatever, so to speak, because the way I was living before, it was not like that. So it was great. It was great. I made a lot of good friends. And it was just I think it set a pretty solid foundation. I didn't kind of half-assed it. I was always tried to make my meetings. If something came up and I couldn't make my meetings, that was fine, but I didn't make excuses. If I started feeling like, oh, I don't want to go to a meeting, I would go to the meeting unless something um, important in my life was coming up. But really, meetings were priority over other mundane things. And I think that built me a good foundation for my sobriety and my recovery. So yeah, moving along, I ended up meeting up with Willie one night, and I just asked him to be my sponsor, and we just started going through the steps and reading through the book and whatnot. And I really, what I really liked about I think what helped me a lot early on was the way the book broke down um, the characteristics, I guess you could say, of an alcoholic. It talks about the craving and the obsession and stuff. Um, I was sharing in a meeting a little while ago, and it was I don't remember what the topic was exactly, but it started talking about the craving. And I think we like when we don't have any recovery or any sobriety, or we're not, aware of meetings or what's talked about, or we don't know anything about what an alcoholic is, when those cravings and obsessions come up, we don't know what to do. We don't know how to handle them. And the meetings kind of is like an outlet for that. And, you know, going to the meetings, I'm um meeting new people and learning about ways to cope with these. And I'm by going to the meeting, like if let's say a craving comes up and I'm feeling kind of antsy or whatever, I knew what I should do, and that was go to a meeting and or call somebody that I have their number that is also in recovery. And I think early on that's super important. And I think a lot of reasons why people, let's say I'm done drinking today, and then tomorrow I wake up and that craving's there. And if they're not aware of AA or anything, they don't know what to do. So they're what they do know is, oh, I gotta stop this feeling that I'm having, or this craving. So I'm going to go back out and use or drink and start that cycle all over again. So that's one thing that always try to talk to newcomers about is, hey, if you're struggling and you have a craving or something, you need to do something. You need to not just wallow in that feeling and that craving and stuff, but you need to um, go to a meeting, call somebody. You can't just sit there and sit in that, because you will eventually cave into it. Just because that's what we've always done. That's what I've always done. And it just makes it gives us an option. If we don't have any options, then we're going to turn to what we know. And that was huge for me early on. I would always talk about, I would get out and then I would feel antsy or have a craving or something, and I knew right where to go to take care of that. So having a positive place to go was huge. So um that's kind of how it started. I met up with Willie and we just started going through the steps and whatnot. And Willie, kind of beforehand, he wanted me to kind of go over um the steps from kind of a non-believer, atheistic point of view, or whatever the case. I'm going to turn my light on real quick because I can't see anything. The sun's starting to go down and I couldn't see really. So um is that light okay, Willie? It's kind of glaring and shit. Okay, cool. But anyway, so I kind of took some notes and stuff and kind of um wrote some things down to make this a little bit more hopefully a little bit clearer and whatnot, so I'm not really rambling on. It's real easy for me to start rambling and whatnot. So let me grab my book real quick. Got my trusty AA book right here, the little mini guy. So anyways, what I'm going to do is kind of just go through the steps kind of briefly. I didn't write a ton about them, but just kind of from my point of view. And if there are other non-believers, or whatever way you want to phrase it, somebody that doesn't really believe in a higher power or whatever, hopefully this can kind of be a help to them. Because I feel like I hear a lot of statistics about non-believers numbers are kind of like growing in the country and whatnot. So if that is the case, I'm sure a lot of those people are also struggling with addiction and stuff. So I think this is really important for those people to hear that there's other people out there that don't believe in a higher power, that they can get sober. There are a lot of podcasts and a lot of people out there that are able to get sober and stay sober without the help of a higher power or a god or whatever the case. So this is definitely important. I think that's what this is about, is trying to help as many people as we can. And I don't think we have to be dogmatic about it and just abide by the book and do it their way. Because I think that if there is more options out there that can help more people, that's what we should do. You know what I mean? So anyways, so yeah, let me just kind of go through this. Step one: we admitted we were powerless over alcohol and that our lives had become unmanageable. What I did on that was I basically just reflected on my past history, and I was able to see, you know, where my life was going, where drugs and alcohol were involved. And I was able to see, you know, times that I would try to quit, I wouldn't be able to. Um, Times that I did quit, I would just go right back to it. Um, where my life was at while I'm using, while I'm in active addiction, you know, loss of job, in and out of jail again. And I was able to see that pattern. And it's like, well, you know, shit, I'm probably an alcoholic. You know, that's what I'm saying. That I'm glad the way that the big book broke that down. Because if I don't know what I have, if I don't know that I have a problem, then I'm not going to be able to address it correctly. You know what I mean? So that was great for me. I think that's the first step for all of us. You know, if we need to decide whether or not we have this thing, whether we are an alcoholic or a drug addict, whatever the case. So number two, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. I looked up some things. I actually have a sponsee right now that he's also an atheist, and like I've only been through the steps once with Willie, and God, I don't even know how long ago. That was probably like 2 years or more ago. Actually, probably like 3 or 4, honestly. Um, so it's been a while. So it was really kind of cool to revisit these things. I think that I kind of started my atheistic journey kind of like around step 8 or 6 or 7 or something. So it was cool to start the steps from one and go through from the non-believing point of view. So anyways, yeah, like I said, step two, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. I asked myself, like, what is a higher power? It's a power greater than ourselves, you know, and like that's the way it defines it. I looked it up, and which way does the book define it as? And I think what they're saying is they're talking about a higher power that can help us, with our issues, with our alcoholism and our drug abuse. And I, as a non-believer, I don't see that. I don't see that there's anything out there that like supernatural that's going to help us. So um I what can help me if I don't believe in this higher power thing? Well, I look around at the meetings that I'm going to, and I can see that, you know, hey, this guy, he's got 5 years sober, this guy's got 3 years sober, and they've dealt with things that I've dealt with, and I can relate to that. I can get actual advice. I can talk to them, and it just makes a lot more sense to me, and it seems more well, it is more tangible. It is tangible, not more tangible. It is tangible. You know, I can talk to them and see them and whatever, you know. And whether you're a believer or a non-believer, I think they all do that. They all do the same thing. You know, they all have sponsors, and they're all talking to each other. And you know, a sponsee's calling a sponsee, hey, what should I do about this? You know, my bills are overdue. What should I do? And he's giving him advice. That's providing help, and that's what the big book is talking about. So um I try to just look at it as simply as I can. Well, the book says that I need a higher power. What is this higher power? The higher power is something that can help me. I think the higher power wording is it kind of can throw people off. Um, Also, something else that I wanted to talk on. I'm sure a lot of people hear this in meetings about, um, um, you know, the people that are too smart, or people that are smart can't get sober and stuff. And I think a lot of that comes from people, you know, like, oh, you're too smart for the God concept or whatever. And I was also sharing about this in a meeting the other week, and I was like, well, if a newcomer comes up to me and he's struggling with this, I don't want him to dumb himself down because he can't understand this higher power thing. I want to meet him where he's at and say, you know, okay, this is where you're at. How can we work through this, and how can I help you? You know what I mean? So I think that's just kind of, um, I don't want to say anything like offensive or whatever, but I think that's kind of where people could kind of give up. Like, well, this guy just couldn't accept God in his life, and that's why he didn't get sober. I'm not going to buy that. I'm gonna say, well, if this guy doesn't believe in something, I'm not going to force him to believe what I believe. I'm going to say, hey man, you're struggling with something, you don't believe this, you're not seeming to get this. What can I do to help you get this? You know what I mean? So I think that's really important. um, let's see here. I might have touched on, I might be rambling again, but reaching out to others, that's huge. I think I touched on all that other stuff. I do have evidence of people helping others, going to meetings, being honest, getting a sponsor, gaining or regaining integrity, making positive decisions. All of those things will help benefit us on that step too. Step 3, let's see here. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. I also looked up what is the will, and it's I've never done that before. I've always kind of had this whatever, just kind of like an intuitive thought about what the will is, but the definition that I seen was it's what one desires. And so obviously this mentions turning our will over to the care of God as we understood him. I basically just made a decision to have better desires, you know, as I'm drinking and using or whatever. My desires were real selfish, all about me, you know. I don't want to man up and stuff. My desire was to not get a job, just sit around, not be a dad, whatever the case. But now that I'm sober, I'm able to address my old desires with a somewhat of a clear mind at this time. Hopefully, you know, I've got a month or a couple months clean or whatever the case, and I can say, you know what, my old desires were pretty out of whack with any type of a good life. You know, these desires are not going to amount to anything beneficial. So I need to get some new desires. What is this new will that I'm going to have? And I can just basically create that. You know, I can say, well, hey, I want to be a better dad. I want to stay out of jail. I want to have money in my pocket. I want to have a home, whatever the case. So just being able to, you know, contrast my old desires with what I want with my new desires, you know, that's really all that was. I think a lot of the wording in here is can be kind of confusing. I think in a way it's easier to look at it with like from an atheistic point of view or a non-believer's point of view, because I don't have all this guesswork of, you know, what is God's will or whatever. I think when we think of God and what does God want for us, it usually aligns with what we want for ourselves. You know what I mean? That's what a lot of, you know, things that my God doesn't like, I don't like. Things that my God likes, I do like. And I can just cut out the God concept and what don't I like? What do I like? I used to like to get high. Now I don't like getting high. I used to like being lazy. Now I get value and accomplishment out of building things at my house, or, you know, going to having a job 40 hours a week, whatever the case, you know what I mean? So that's kind of all I have for number 3. Step 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. This one's pretty simple. I hear a lot of talk about this too, and I don't really get it in AA. They, you know, it's basically this step is just about writing down our resentments. I hear a lot of talk in AA about this is real scary and you're bringing up all the bad stuff that you've done. This step doesn't have anything to do about the bad stuff that you've done. This step is just who I have resentments against. You know, my brother, my mom, my parents, my girlfriend, you know, OPD, Ogden Police Department, whatever the case. This is really a pretty simple step. All you're doing is writing down, making a list of things that you have a resentment against. And that's really all I have as far as that one goes. This one isn't writing down all the bad shit that I've done. And you know, I hear that a lot in AA, and I just read the book. It just says right there, you know, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, writing down my resentments and who they're against and whatnot. The big book does break that down. I'm not going to get into all the different columns and stuff. Anyways, step 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. All this was sitting down with my sponsor and going over the resentments that I had and getting a different perspective on these resentments and why do I have these resentments. And it really seemed like, I wrote this down, like my resentments were like either out of my control. Let's say I had a resentment because of something that happened to me when I was little. That was out of my control. I don't have anything to do with that. Or I have a resentment because my brother treated me badly. Well, why did my brother treat me badly? That was because I was shitty to him. That was my fault. So that I can take accountability for that. Or a lot of my resentments were against people that were directly related to my drug and alcohol abuse. And once I was able to look at those and say, hey, it was kind of more just, it made me more aware of where my alcoholic and drug abuse and living that lifestyle was going to get me. Because I was like, oh, this guy ripped me off. Well, if I wasn't doing drugs and stuff and dealing with shady people, then I wouldn't be getting ripped off. So it just kind of made it more concrete, I guess you could say, about, I want to stay on this path of recovery. So let's move on to number 7. Humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. And actually, this is kind of when I started questioning like the God belief and whatnot, because it talks about like he's going to remove these from me if I pray to him and whatnot, but then he's going to take them from me for, let's say I don't do anything bad for a week or something, and then I do it again. Is that God giving it back to me, or God trying to teach me a lesson or something? I don't think it has anything to do with anything like that. All I see it as I have these defects of character. What are defects of character? um they're basically just things that I don't like about myself, or I don't approve about myself. So if I make a list of things that I don't like about myself and I look at them and I'm aware of them, then when it's just a constant work in progress. If I have a behavior that I don't like of lying, um and I want to change that, I think it's up to me to work on those and to become more honest. um it's not a matter of waiting for this God or giving him praise or giving him enough attention to take them from me or whatever. Just that doesn't make any sense to me. So I think it's just our commitment to being a better person, um acknowledging the things that we don't like about ourselves that we used to do, um and just constantly trying to do better on these things. um Identify what I disapprove of in my thoughts and behaviors, continue to work on them, make mental notes. You can make a list of them. Let's say I stole something at work today. I don't want to do that anymore. I'm not going to do that. Take this, whatever I stole back, or whatever the case. Anytime there's something that I do that makes me feel icky, be aware that it made me feel icky and try not to do that again in the future. And it will come to fruition, or whatever you want to say, that you will stop doing that behavior in the future if I keep working on it. Also, this was huge early on, is remember to take credit for when you do make a better decision. A lot of people talk, oh, God did this for me, or whatever the case. I think that kind of belittles my progress or my accomplishments. I think it's great for alcoholics and drug addicts to acknowledge the accomplishments that they've achieved in their lives. It was huge for me to be aware of an old behavior that I always used to do, and then here I am 3 months down the road and I haven't done that behavior for 3 months or whatever the case. That was huge for me. It made me feel like I'm getting this. I'm getting sobriety. Here I am, an alcoholic and an addict for 16 plus years, and here's progress that I'm making, and I can see this progress in my life. So that was huge for me. Pat yourself on the back if you're making better decisions in your life. In your life. I think that's huge to give ourselves props when we do make better decisions in our life. 7, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. I looked up shortcomings. It's just anytime we're falling short of our ideal level of expectations for ourselves. Don't beat yourself up if you're falling short of what you think you should be doing. Acknowledge that you haven't done as well as you should have been, and just try to do better next time. It's really that simple. Let's see. 8. This was one of I really liked this step because I was actually going out into the world and making some of the wrongs that I've done in the world right. The step is made a list of all persons. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped one. This is just making a list again, real simple. Made a list of all persons that we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Just write down the people that you have wronged and you think you might owe an apology to. Real simple, nothing special there. 9, this is the one that I really enjoyed because it was me going out into the world and owning up to the things that I'd done to people. One of them that I did do was when I was younger, we broke into a music shop, stole a bunch of guitars and shit. This was like 12 years ago or something. I'm not sure exactly, but as I was going through my steps, this came out, and I called the guy and I was like, hey, you probably showed up at work one morning and realized that your store was broken into and a bunch of guitars were missing. That was me. How can I make this right? And it didn't really turn out to be any type of an issue. He's like, hey man, I'm glad that you're turning your life around. I wish you the best. So you do have to be aware, like it does say in the book, that make amends except when it's to do so would injure them or others. Probably consult your sponsor or something before you do anything real reckless. Just keep yourself out of jail or from harming anyone else. Let's see here. Step 10, continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. Also pretty simple. Just go throughout your day trying to do your best. If you don't do your best, own up to it and apologize if you need to. Step 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. In this new lifestyle, who knows where you might get motivation or I can't think of the word right now, but who knows where you might get motivation from, or meditation, just actual meditation, or working out, going out with your kids. I think it's a lot of just reflecting on your life, how far you've came, what your life is like now, and being grateful for it. Step 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all of our affairs. I don't look at it like any type of a spiritual awakening. I look at it like a realization of where I was, where I'm at now, and what do I have to offer to other people in the world, but also other alcoholics and drug addicts. And that's basically what I have to offer. What I was like, what I've done, what I still do, and what it's like now. It seems to be working for me so far. I'll have 6 years sober in September 5th. So far it's been a pretty groovy journey. It's a lot better. And yeah, like if any of you out there, atheists, agnostic, curious, believers, non-believers, want to reach out to me, my name is just Stephen Burtis, and I am on Facebook, so you can search me there. It's STEPHEN, and my last name is Burtis, BURDESS. Feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to talk with you about any questions or thoughts on anything I said or whatever the case. So I appreciate you hitting me up and asking me to do this, Willie. Thanks. Take care.